Very good. Thank you, Hannah. And thank you again to everybody that has decided to join us this week in, I think, the third of our weekly CatDV webinars. So for those of you that saw our little teaser that went out earlier on in the week, I think we talked about having a brand new CatDV user interface that had been several years in the making. And unfortunately, this is the CatDV joke. We're not very good at humor. So the CatDV joke is that the secret CatDV user interface that has been years in the making is the file system or the object URL naming scheme that an organization chooses to run with. So CatDV's made extensive use of file and folder naming throughout its history, and the project and folder creation tool is a logical extension of the stuff that we've been doing for a while. So I'm going to take a few moments to talk through a few of the principles behind keeping asset management and file and folder and URL naming in step. And then I'll hand over to Matthew for the meat of the webinar that's going to talk about the tool itself and show us how it all works. Okay, so as ever, let's start talking about, why have this stuff? So the challenge for creative teams, I think, is fairly well known to probably most of us on this course. So creative teams, they have deadlines. They want to focus on getting their content made and shipped at high quality and in the least possible time. It's not on media management, particularly when organizations make use of temporary staff for peaks in demand and freelancers that come in and out of a facility. There's really not a lot of time for training or to enable people to understand the CatDV process or that facility's workflow of where things should be tagged and logged. At the same time, people are human, right? I can't spell. And so if I was being asked to log and tag, then there's plenty of chance for me getting things wrong. And just behind me, we're saying, yeah, media management should not be a tax. So media management should overlay onto all of this challenge and make it better, not make it worse, not get in the way of people trying to do their jobs. Creative people. Okay, so how has CatDV got about doing that in its history so far? Number one, solid design. We keep saying that even good tools can be deployed badly. So one of the things we absolutely advocate is designing your CatDV organization to be similar to your storage organization. And that way it's familiar to people that have previously been using storage and file and folder naming to find their way around. And it's much more likely then to be adopted. So that institutionalization of process and change is really important. We've seen lots of MAM deployments that have gone wrong and other people's software being left on the shelf because it's just not been part of the DNA of the way the organization does work. So solid metadata design, so that if you have a catalog structure, say in CatDV, that has customer, project name, and then asset type, that might reflect exactly what you've got on storage, customer name, project ID, and audio, video, whatever. And so that gives some real clues to people using both systems, how to find things. And in fact, for those folks that are freelancers that really may have nothing to do with the asset management system, if they can help it, because they just want to do their creative stuff, then all they have to do is just put things into the right place, and the file and folder naming gives them some really good signposts about where the right place is without any training whatsoever. So solid metadata design is really important, and we know there's a lot of platforms out there actually that don't do this, and you ingest content into them and it gives the content weird numbers and letters as their names, and you can never find the original files, and it prevents us human beings being able to do the things that we do best, and that does lead to a lot of failed deployments. So CatDV doesn't do that, obviously. So obviously solid metadata design in our view is really important, and then of course we're only here because we have what we consider to be a great media management platform, CatDV. So what CatDV provides, easy logging and tagging. We've often been told we have the best tagger and the best logger in the business, and we hope that is still true. We aspire to make it so. Some of our launches the last couple of weeks hopefully have indicated that with our overlays and being able to draw on the frames and such like. AI enrichment, being able to get logging and tagging for low cost, using some of the the big players, Google and Amazon and Microsoft, for example, in the auto tagging, speech to text, object detection, people detection space. And then auto tagging. So when people have been using their file and folder systems, then being able to make the very best kind of human intelligent use of it. So for example, if we've got, in fact, I've got an example. Let's have a look. For example, if I've got a structure that an organization's been using that has a mount point with some masters in it, and then customer, project, and asset type, as I had before. And there's an example underneath. There's a NoNab teaser folder with audio. So SBS, our company, NoNab teaser is the project, it's an audio, and there's a voiceover that MP3 file was in there. Well, some of the stuff that CatDV can do really well, let's pick out that little bit of the folder and let's store that in a file, in a metadata field called media, which we fill up with audio easily. So we take out of the file and folder name a piece and put it straight into a CatDV field. Easy, easy peasy. Getting a bit more sophisticated, we can then start doing a bit of translation. So in the file and folder name, you'll see that people are using sensible file and folder names, and they're not using spaces, for example. I know everyone does, but let's say that they're not. We're using underscores here so that every single tool in the chain is going to be able to handle these files well. CatDV can strip out those. So behind me, get rid of the underscores, turn them into spaces. CatDV can do that too. And then getting a bit more sophisticated again, it's like, well, if we're using project codes or company identifiers rather than the fully expanded names, then CatDV can do that expansion too. And we have quite a sophisticated rules file that can be applied, or rules engine that can be applied as we ingest content that can expand metadata. And as a case in point, we have an amazing case study with our chums at Dorna Sports, and they run the MotoGP, International Motorbike Racing Championship, and have done for many, many years. And they've been a long-time user of CatDV. And their expansion of metadata from the file and folder name is quite something to behold. So the team is absolutely ruthless about ensuring that content is put in the right place. And they have a lot of content coming in over a 3-day race meet. You might have 6 races a day, you might have 8 bikes per race, 3 days. You might have 6 cameras on a bike, you might have 20 cameras around, 30, 40 cameras around the track. All that content comes in, it all goes into exactly the right place. And even during the race, Dorna's able to work out the race name, the track name, the weather at the track for historic stuff, the rider, the team, the sponsor, the colors, the number on the bike. Hundreds of pieces of metadata are expanded from the file and folder naming structure they've got in immediate time. So no physical logging, person sitting there tagging stuff, but immediate logging and tagging so that content's available to broadcasters immediately and during the race. So that content has to be tagged immediately. And they've really gone to town with this whole expansion of metadata from file and folder naming, even before we get to AI and all that kind of stuff. So that's all cool. That's all cool. CatDV's been doing that for some time, and I think we were the first to make that really trivially easy to do, and at the same time really powerful. So then we thought, well, what next? And in fact, this is born of I think 3 customers who've had very similar requirements, and we've taken what we've done for them as services projects and then built something that amalgamates all the good stuff that we learned whilst doing that into a tool that we think can have general applicability. So the CatDV project tool, it's not a particularly exciting name, but the project tool, what does it do? It creates templated folders. Cool. So you can set yourself a folder structure along the lines of the one we just talked about, customer, project, asset type, or whatever, that automatically is created every time we set up a new project using CatDV to do so. At the same time, we're going to be creating a CatDV catalog at some relevant point in the catalog structure that reflects that project at the same time. So immediately you've created a catalog or a catalog and a project in CatDV, you've got the place to put your content on storage and the place to see that content in CatDV, and they're nice and aligned. All cool. But then it goes a stage further, because of course, if I've got project 1, then probably the next project that we create is going to be called project 2, the next one after that, etc. So having some auto incrementing numbering schemes so that you can automatically create projects with numbers, or increment ISKIs if you're doing advertising and such like, then we can do all of that. And then auto naming. So if we want to have a project file, let's say we've got an Adobe project in a folder, and we want to name that Adobe project the same as the customer name amalgamated with the project ID. Cool, we can do that as well. So auto naming, auto numbering of the things that are in this template structure. And yeah, so what does that mean? That means we can ensure that we get even more consistency. And when setting up these templated folders, there's no possibility of people mistyping or misnaming things, which again means more consistency, more automated tagging, and even more value out of your CatDV system. The SKU for the project tool has a few other things in it that are going to depend on your environment, and so you need a little bit of services, but those services are bundled with the project tool purchase, if you like. And that is to set up a watch folder that will automatically look at the project folder structure that we've created on storage, automatically ingest and index content into CatDV, and extract the metadata again into CatDV for your chosen template. So project, customer, asset type, for example, in the examples we've been using here. And then also, if you want to upload your content using the CatDV web client, then we will be able to set that up so that that content will automatically go into the CatDV catalog, and then will be filed in the right place on storage as well. So again, trying to make it as foolproof as we can. Folks that are just using the SAN, put stuff in the right place. Folks that are uploading to CatDV, choose the catalog, upload it to CatDV, and CatDV moves it to the right place so that it's in the consistent corporate organizational file and folder structure. So that's basically the premise. So extending the cool stuff that we already do to make it even more consistent, even more easy to use. Yeah, that's what we've got. So that's my little bit. I'm at this point going to stop my share and hand over to Matthew, who's going to show us it in action.
Thanks, Dave. And yeah, it's good to be back on a Thursday, isn't it? It feels like a webinar on a Thursday. It's a good routine for us to get into. So let me just share my screen so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. So obviously I've got my CatDV system here. So as Dave was talking about, many of you will have your storage system, and on that you will have your sort of file and folder structure that you define for a project. So today I've decided to set up 2 different types of projects. So I've got my news projects and my sport projects, and you'll see here that I've got a folder on my storage called project templates, and that's where those templates are actually going to live. So in my news template, I've got all of the different folders that you might expect to see. So footage, stills, audio. You can define this structure however you like for your particular requirements. And, some might just be a simple folder. For others, for example, in my sport, I've got my footage, I've got an EVS and a feed folder. So you can multi-level that as well. And in your templates, you can also put in files as well as folders. So I know many of you already do this using, say, Apple Automator scripts or batch files, or you might even have a media manager at your facility whose job it is, when a new project is set up, to kind of go and create this structure on disk for you. So the idea behind this tool is kind of to help you automate this, as Dave said, and basically enforce some consistency. You'll notice in this particular template, I've actually got a Premiere project file, and you'll notice that this file is named a bit weirdly. It's got some funny characters in there, which normally would fill me with dread if that was the way people were filing their media. But actually what this is going to do is these are special variables. So when I set up my project, it's going to copy that Premiere Pro project, and it's going to do some substitution to actually rename that file when it copies it. So this can be quite powerful as well, because I know many customers, they might have a standard Premiere project file that they start their project from. It's already got some sequences and some assets in that. Great. You can use that in exactly this way. And in my news template, I've also got a text file here called package details. And this, in the same way, is a very simple text file, but it's also got some text and variables in there. So again, we can do these sort of substitution rules on particular types of files. So these are my sort of what I would call my project template. So I've got my news template and my sports template. What I've also got is I've got my project folders. So I've got my news folder. This is where the projects are going to be created. And I've got my sports folder where my sports projects are going to be created. So what does that look like in the CatDV interface? Well, here I am in Web3 in a catalog. And I've got this tools menu up here, and the tools menu is where you can access certain functionality like archive functionality, but it's also how you access the project tool. So you'll see in there, I've got the option to create a project sports or create a project news. Now, because I'm logged in as an administrator, I can actually create new project templates or configure existing ones. But if I was logged in as a regular user, I would only have permission to actually create the projects. So if I create a new news project, it's going to pop up a form for me. So it's going to ask me to enter some metadata. Okay, so my package name for my news article is going to be, I don't know, Boris Baby. You know, that's what I'm making a 1-minute package on today. And I can fill in some other metadata fields. So this is going to be a 5-minute bulletin, and the city is London. And these fields are basically normal CatDV metadata fields. So when you set this up, you can define what that panel looks like, but you can also define the fields that go on that panel. And indeed, you can say whether they're mandatory, or you can give, a pick lists to say these are the values you must use, or you can allow them to be free text. And that goes back to what Dave was saying before about enforcing consistency. So I'm going to create my package. I press the OK button. And behind the scenes, what CatDV's done is it's done two things. It's created a catalog for me in my catalog structure, but it's also created the project folder for me on storage. So if I go and have a look in my projects folder now, if I go into my news folder, which was empty before, you'll see it's now created a 5-minute folder, and it's created a folder called Boris Baby. And in there, it's copied that skeleton project structure in for me. So I've got all of those folders that I had before. If I look in this package details text file, you see it's actually gone and filled in some of the metadata there from the form that I filled in based on that variable expansion. And I guess in any other way, I've now got two options, two ways of getting media into my project. So I guess the first way is for me to just get files and to start putting them into the appropriate place. So I can go into my footage folder and I can get some media. I can start putting that in there. Okay, so I'm starting to file the media in my project. How is this going to look in the CatDV interface? Well, if I go back to my catalog structure now, you'll see that in my news production group, it's created a project for me, sorry, a catalog for me called Boris Baby, and it's filed it in that. And effectively, what will happen is I will now need to use my worker, which effectively is going to do a quick folder scan, and that is going to start importing files for me. So I've actually got 4 workers running today. Okay, so I've got one worker node which is doing my film strips. I've got another worker node that's doing my proxies. I've got another worker monitoring the project folders. So you can see behind the scenes, it's scanning those folders. I've set it to scan every 30 seconds, I think. So it's gone and found the media that I put into that project folder, and it's now filed it in the appropriate catalog for me, and it's gone and generated my film strips and proxies. So that's kind of ready to go, and based on that structure. The other option I've got, as Dave mentioned before, is to use the upload functionality from within CatDV, so from the web interface. The advantage of using the upload facility is this allows us to capture additional metadata at the point that the users are actually uploading the content. So in Web3, I press this big plus button up here, and I can actually drag a file in. So I'm going to take this wonderful footage of a penguin. For those of you who watch the other webinars, I'm going to stay clear of wolves because obviously I don't know what a wolf looks like. So I'm going to use a penguin today, and I can start setting some metadata. So I can give this a star rating of 5 stars. I can say it's a penguin, and I can even set the approval status of work in progress. And again, these upload forms are customizable in your system, so you can define what the important metadata is for you to capture at the point you upload. So I'm going to upload that file now. That's going to send it to the CatDV server for me. And in this case, I've just got it going into a catalog called unfiled uploads. So you'll see there my penguin clip has appeared. You'll see it set the approval status to work in progress, and it's told it it's a penguin as well. And it's gone and created proxies and thumbnails as you'd expect, or it's doing that in the background. As Dave said, when we set this up for you, the project tool, we can actually set it so you could go to your project here and actually upload direct into that. So you could actually go and upload direct, and that will copy it into the storage for you in the correct location. So I guess if you had something like an uploads folder, then you could copy that in there. Just to show you the configuration of these projects. So if I go to configure project templates, this is kind of the setup for my news project. So I won't go into too much detail, but I just want to show you the sort of things you can do. So you can say which production group it goes into. I can tell it which panel that it's going to use to gather the metadata when I create a project. I'm going to tell it the template folder and also the root folder. And then I'm actually giving it a naming schema. And this allows us to have a different naming schema from your catalog structure and your file structure. So you'll see for my news projects, I file them, the catalog based on $D is like a special magic CatDV variable that means today's date. So it will automatically fill in the date that was created. And then it's going to use package type and package name. Whereas on the disk, it's not going to include that date. It's just going to put them in package type and package name, because I've made the assumption that package name will always be unique for a particular type. So you can have different naming conventions on your catalog structure versus your disk structure. And finally, as we saw, we've got this option to expand variables, both in the file names, but also in the file contents as well. So if I have a look at, well, yeah, let's just do a sports one quickly. So if I create a new sports project, this one is very simple. I've just got an option to pick what type of sport it is. So I'm going to say football, create a new project. It's created my catalog and it's created my files on disk. So if I go to my sports project folder now, so have a look in projects, sports, okay, it's created a football folder for me, today's date, and then you'll see it's actually renamed the Premiere project file for me and copied that in as well. So that's what I wanted to show you guys today, just to give you a feel for how that's going to work.
Very good. Thank you, Matthew. So, I mean, this week, I think that's probably about it for our prepared content. We decided to make a snappy one and not take up too much of time that is valuable. There is time for questions, and of course, I do want to give a pitch for next week. So let me see if I can just share screen briefly. Okay, so if you would like some further information about the project tool and how it might be useful for you, then we'd always welcome a conversation. I think we've still got our CatDV NAB 2020. You can book me up. So go on there and you can request a conversation with one of the team, and we'd be more than happy to run you through how the project tool can help you. And then next week, same time, same place, we are going to be covering customization with CatDV. So CatDV is an amazing platform for giving the best of buy versus build. So we're going to run through a whole pile of the things we can do, particularly with our JavaScript APIs. So custom user interfaces that configure themselves based on metadata, custom uploader to Dropbox for sharing. There's 7 or 8 that we're going to go through and we're going to show what's possible with CatDV, as well as give some clues about how to get started yourselves or with your chosen integrator partners, or with us, or with North Shore, our valued professional services partners too. So customization with CatDV would, yes, I'm going to be doing that one with Brian, I think, next week. So would welcome you joining us next week if that is something that you are interested in. CatDV is a platform, the best of buy versus build, great stuff out of the box, fairly easy customization, certainly very easy compared to other platforms on the market. So thank you for bearing with me while I did that little pitch next week. Now, I think all that remains is for some questions. So I don't know whether, Hannah, you can help us to moderate them a little, please.
Yeah, of course, not a problem. So we're going to run through some of your questions. If you want to keep sending them in, then we'll get to some more questions as we go. Just a reminder, because I know a few of you have been asking, we are recording the webinar and we'll be posting it onto our website hopefully tomorrow. And as you've signed up for the webinar, you'll receive an email when that's live so you can watch it back. So the first question came in during the first part of the webinar, and somebody was asking where the file and folder name metadata extraction is set up and how do they get hold of it?
Yeah, so in the worker, it's in the worker when you do an ingest, then there are a set of variables that CatDV has access to, and they're in the format $1, $2, $3, and then square brackets around the path name. If you'd like some further information on how to use that, then do again book up a health check, book up a you can book me with one of the support team, and they'll be able to show you that. So in fact, there are several ways of doing it. So the first off is just being able to use those variables. Then there's the more sophisticated version that uses the metadata rules, and in fact there's even a more sophisticated version than that that takes a spreadsheet that is filled in by the user, and that fills in the pick lists perhaps with the team rosters and such like. That gets watched by CatDV and brought in and automatically populates new content. So yeah, strongly encourage you to talk to us, book up a health check, and we'll show you the basics and talk about what you'd like to do and see if we can help some more. Did I get that right, Matthew?
Yep, no, absolutely.
Cool.
I mean, I can show the configuration, but I don't think it's going to be super exciting. So it's, yeah, probably best to book up some sessions with the a health check session, I think, with the support team.
Yeah, so we have this little language, these little variables, you know, $1, and then you give it the path name. We'll pick out the first thing, I think, going left to right. $-1 will pick up the first thing going right to left.
And you can extract both file names, so using sort of common separators like underscores or dashes or spaces, but also in the path as well. So, you know, some people have a file naming convention where they might say, I don't know, ABC123 underscore blah blah blah, where ABC123 is the house ID, so you could extract that at the point of ingest as well. And that's really the power of the worker is we're not saying to you this is the workflow you must use. It's highly customizable and it's highly configurable based on your existing workflow.
And that fits really well. In fact, we've been doing quite a lot of that this week. That fits really well with things like getting rid of illegal characters or leading spaces or trailing spaces, which are the bane of many media managers' lives. That whole kind of thing, doing that tidy up and that metadata extraction on ingest can save a lot of time later.
Great, thank you very much. So the next question, for somebody who joined a little bit late, is the project creation tool a new product? And if so, which versions of CatDV does it work with, and is it separate?
Yes, it is a new product. So it has a SKU of its own on the price list, which you can get from your nearest and dearest integration partner reseller. And it works with CatDV Enterprise servers and Pegasus servers, and we always encourage people to be using recent versions. So yeah, if you have a particularly old CatDV system, do ask support and they'll be able to tell you. Yeah, server 9, use that.
And as you said, Dave, it includes a bit of help to get up and running and sort of get you started, doesn't it? So
yeah.
Oh, excellent. That's a great lead into the next question, which was what are the timeframes around having this installed? Hard question.
How quick do you want it? I mean, well, so we've got You Can Book Me Open, or if is You Can Book Me Open already for next week, Hannah?
If it isn't, it can be.
Yeah, okay. So we'll open the You Can Book Me tomorrow UK time. So by the time that the US folks come online, there'll be slots available next week. We can make those slots available kind of all the week. So I think the first step is to talk to one of the support team, and then we can get going. So it's a launched product, and it's deployed in various guises at about 3 places already. It's ready to go. So yeah, talk to us, and we'll try and move as fast as you need us to.
Excellent. So a question for either of you, but this one specifically aimed at Matthew, was Matthew, can you talk about how you direct traffic when you're uploading via the web client? How did you get files that were uploaded out of their initial drop folder location to their proper catalog without manually moving it around?
Yeah, that was a great question. So when you upload a file through the web interface, it gets filed on a location as defined in the CatDV server configuration. But at the same time that you upload the file, it also, as well as the physical file itself, it includes an XML file, and that XML has actually the all the metadata that you set in the upload form. If you have a catalog selected at the point that you do the upload, the ID of that catalog will also come through into the system. And something I didn't specifically show, but if I just show it now, is when these catalogs are created, they actually have metadata on the catalogs themselves. And part of that is the project folder. So what you can do is, if you know which catalog was selected when a clip was uploaded, you can actually go and get that project folder, and then you can go and file the media in there appropriately. So basically using the worker, where my worker is monitoring the web upload folder, and then I define my rules in my worker step to say either leave the media there or move it somewhere else. And I also say which catalog to file that particular piece of media into.
Yeah, and currently how you do it when you're ingesting is a little piece of JavaScript, which is why, as part of the SKU for this, we are bundling some services for us to help get that set up. I suspect over time we shall make that more pointy and clicky. But right now it's a bit of JavaScript that we will have our services people help to configure for your environment.
Thank you. Next question, can the tool create alias folders or shortcuts?
Can you say that question again? I didn't hear or didn't understand.
Can the tool create alias folders or shortcuts?
So I guess by alias folders, maybe people mean like sort of symbolic links or sort of shortcuts. I guess if there are shortcuts in the template, then it could copy those because they are effectively files on disk. I probably want to understand the requirement a bit more actually to sort of give a definitive answer. But basically it copies the contents of the template folder and does some substitution at the point that it does the copy. So
yeah, ditto. I think understanding that workflow, that sounds really interesting. So I would very much encourage you to talk to us so we can work out what that means.
Excellent. And I guess two-part question, but from two different people. So one is where are media file pathings configured?
So for the catalog, I think Matthew just showed where when we create a catalog, that catalog has knowledge about where the media is stored from the server's perspective. And then otherwise, is that maybe a question about media stores and how?
Yeah, I think it was a more generic question, kind of across CatDV rather than this specific.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew, do you want to just kind of pull up and just give a 30-second overview of what a media store is and does? Because they're really important these days. CatDV used to only be able to handle high-res and proxy, and now we can handle high-res, proxy, film strip, Windows, Mac path, and all of that. And all of that is managed by this really clever thing called media stores.
Yeah, so here's my media stores for my demo system. I've got quite a few of them set up for various different things that I do. But effectively, what we're looking at today is news projects and sports projects. So let's focus on those. So in my media store, I have a high-res location. So this is where the high-res files are going to go. I also have a proxy location for both video and stills, and I have a film strip location, which is the film strips in Web3 where you can scrub across. So these media stores are configured in the web client. They can also be configured in the desktop, but they can be used throughout your CatDV system. So basically, it's a set of rules that says if the file path starts with this, then you need to go to this location to find the proxy and then add the rest of the path onto there. So that's how that sort of pathing works in CatDV. There are other ways that you can do it, but this is sort of the recommended sort of de facto way to do things across the platform.
And this can be expanded. I mean, it's probably getting onto the stuff we're talking about next week to an extent. This can be expanded to have as many of these variants, if you like, of media as you like. So if you were doing a stills workflow and you had a print ready copy as the original, no, you might have the Illustrator file or the Photoshop file, then you might have a print ready version, you might have a web friendly version that's a bit smaller. And all of those could be managed as different types of media store, different path types within a media store.
Yeah, so I could have a mezzanine media store where I might put some Adobe mezzanine files in. The other thing we use this for is equivalence. So my sort of paths there are all set up with very much a Mac Linux environment, but if I was running on a system that was also Windows as well, then I can add another high-res path. So I can add equivalence and say, mount storage projects news is actually equivalent to D projects news and add that in there. So that's how I set up those sort of media relationships if you've got a mixed environment, which again, I think is a real strength of CatDV, allowing you to do that.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Matthew.
Great. Well, I think that's all we've got time for today. If you've got any other questions, please feel free to send them into sales@squarebox.com or support@squarebox.com, and one of our team will help you. Just a reminder, we're sending out a mailer to you all tomorrow with a link to watch it back, and we'll also include a link for if you want to speak to our team and find out any more. Otherwise, thank you all for taking time to join us today, and we hope we'll see you again soon at one of our upcoming webinars.
Wonderful. Thanks again for your time. Cheers.